Cities in West Africa are growing rapidly. To meet the rising urban demand for food, agricultural goods produced in rural areas are carried into cities where they are sold to consumers. Globalized food markets and changing diets mean that cities increasingly rely on large-scale, long-distance transportation of food. For instance, West African countries are highly dependent on international trade for selected commodities, such as rice, fish, wheat, and processed food products like tomato paste. Landlocked countries depend on neighbouring coastal countries to connect to the global market, as imported goods are transported from ports across land by road. There is little intra-regional trade, despite the potential for agricultural production and trade afforded by the region's different agro-ecological production zones. ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, maintains protocols on the free movement of goods, persons and transportation within its 15 member states, aiming to promote regional agricultural trade. However, many studies have reported breaches of these protocols through various official and unofficial barriers affecting both intra-regional as well as international trade. We wanted to find out which stakeholders are involved in transporting goods across borders and which challenges on the ground really hinder cross-border trade. Therefore, we embarked on a trip from the port in Tema in Ghana to Burkina Faso's capital Ouagadougou. Travelling from Tema to Ouagadougou, one crosses 5 different agro-ecological zones. Each zone presents a particular landscape of nature, agricultural production and settlement. Before the trip, we spoke with various stakeholders involved in cross-border trade at the port in Tema. We travelled with a truck carrying rice originally from India, transiting through the Tema port and destined for Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. Our driver was Abubakar Saini, a member of OTRAV, the Burkinabe Drivers' Union. During our trip, we talked to about 20 people involved in cross-border trade and road transport. We also captured the locations of official and unofficial checkpoints along the route using a GPS device. The major challenges for drivers observed on this trip were issues relating to checkpoints mounted by the police service, the customs officials, and other agencies such as the Ghana Highway Authority. Vehicles are stopped at these checkpoints and drivers usually buy their way out in order to avoid further delays. We counted 100 checkpoints between Tema and Paga and 12 between Paga and Ouagadougou. These range from official police and customs barriers to a few uniformed men on motorbikes and include checkpoints operating in daytime as well as in the night. These checkpoints are concentrated in the Brong Ahafo and northern regions of Ghana. At each checkpoint in Ghana, we paid on average $0.5 and in Burkina Faso $2.8. In Ghana, there was on average one checkpoint every 6.5 kilometers. In Burkina Faso, there were fewer checkpoints, one checkpoint every 11 kilometers. We realized that not every driver pays the same. Payments on the road vary depending on the type and origin of commodity, the transporting organization, and the transit corridor. For example, trucks carrying perishable goods and live animals are treated differently to those carrying non-perishable goods. Police and customs officers tend to target these drivers who have no other option but to settle quickly the matter to avoid their highly perishable goods starting to rot. At the border, we also observed discrimination against certain groups. Due to technical problems relating to the recently introduced electronic clearance system, we had to spend 2 days at the border, where we took the opportunity to talk to different people, such as other drivers and traders. We found out that drivers employed by trucking companies experience less harassment than individuals who are organised in unions, and drivers who are not backed by a company or union are the ones that suffer the most on the road. Some drivers and traders shared their experience with us.
I'm John Sinkusi. I'm driver transporting ammonia from Takrady to Ouagadougou. If you carry this load, you don't have problem on the road. You don't have problem with police. Apart from maybe you take your people to custom. Apart from that, you don't have any problem again. No police will stop you. No police will collect anything from you.
While drivers transporting imports move between the two countries with ease, the same cannot be said for drivers transporting local goods between the two countries, even though the ECOWAS protocols should ensure the free movement of goods produced in its member countries. One example is the tomato trade between Burkina Faso and Ghana. In the dry season, Ghanaian traders rely on Burkina Faso for fresh tomatoes. Between 50 and 60 trucks with tomatoes cross the Paga border each day, coming from various tomato-grown communities in Burkina Faso.
My name is Abdurrahman. I'm a driver driving from Ghana to Burkina. I'm a cargo driver, loading tomatoes from there to Ghana. But we are facing some challenges from Burkina to Ghana here. They're always taking too much money from us. And we don't know the reason why they are doing that. At times, Ghana here also, they are, customs and police also do the same things to us. But we are appealing to the government and the stakeholders to do something about it.
The problem is that tomatoes in the very uneven and north, a bad trip. Tomatoes baswa, very a double base 6 and 7. I'm saying Congo from Po to Nobre, Santos to Kamasa, Congo in New York. They say, no matter Quintra, a baswa Muslas Passe, Piesca, that's Bassene Pianoson, I was a Cobaco also. Still, Amujesco, we not Quintra Mujes.
Not only are drivers and traders required to pay more at the checkpoints on the road, at the border, we notice that instead of submitting their documents directly to customs officers, intermediary agents that are known as Goro boys are the ones that transact business on their behalf. Tomato traders explained that these agents charge a lump sum of about 400 GHC or $81 at the Ghanaian side of the border and 70,000 to 90,000 franc CFA at the Burkinabe side. This corresponds to around $160. Out of the total amount, less than half of the money goes as official fees to the customs or other government agencies at the border. Overall, a tomato trader travelling from Techiman to Ouagadougou and back would pay 10 times more than we did transporting imported rice from Tema to Ouagadougou on the road and at the border.
You told us here about Burkina Faso, 25 million. Do Ghana so. Ghana customs so. What's a chia? Woman fights is because when you 10 cheese no what. Just say you too much in yes rain service so and easy. Pay the toilet so no. Ya ban ya ko bank say ya the bank is can ya adwuma. Ya ko bank say ko discount so almost say ya boka with ya go minister.
This means that the transportation of local food products is far more expensive than the transportation of imported food products, despite the ECOWAS protocols on free trade of local produce. During our trip through West Africa, we saw and learnt a lot. The trip gave us the chance to observe different agro-ecological zones within the two countries. We saw how challenges at the port, on the road and at the border affect some groups more than others. The system creates an unsupportive environment for the transport of agricultural goods produced and consumed in the region, compared to imported goods. Local food transporters pay most when it comes to illegal charges on the road. Transitors with imported food commodities who are organised in unions pay less, and transitors who are organised in companies with non-food freight pay least. This means that intra-regional trade is affected most by these informal barriers, despite its potential to create jobs along the entire value chain for the local population. These obstacles influence the cost of transport, and therefore of food in general, eventually affecting the consumer.